Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Android application development. So what I'm going to be doing today is actually showing you how to create a list-based application with items that you can tap. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is create a new class. And this class will extend a list view. I'm just going to go ahead and name that CustomListView. Excuse the little pop-ups in the corner right there. Gotta love ads. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is type extends ListView and go ahead and import the references. What it'll do is actually ask you to create a constructor, and that'll just take a context. So what I'm going to do is actually create a public field called adapter. It's going to be ArrayAdapter, and the type of that adapter I'm going to leave question mark for now because I haven't created the object of the adapter yet. You can go ahead and import that too. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new class here in a bit. You'll see right here. I'm just going to go new class. I'm going to call this CustomListItemView. This is actually what's going to be inside the adapter. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to extend a relative layout and import that as well. I'm also going to create a constructor right there. So now we're all set and we have that class down. I'm going to actually jump back to the custom list item, or custom list view, excuse me. And I'm going to change that question mark to a custom list item view. So basically think of it as an array list of custom list item views, except it's in an array adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and instantiate that by setting adapter to new array adapter custom list item view. And I'm going to pass the context. And right here, it actually needs to take a resource. So I just do android.r, and I made a mistake, but it's android.r.id.content. That actually will not matter when we use this. What I'm going to do is create the open and close brackets and override a method. This method is @override view or public view. Now I typed in void first, but you'll see a little bit I fixed that. Get view int position, and then it takes a view. So I'm just going to do convert, and then view group. These names can differ. You can have, as long as the types match, you can name convert anything and group anything. Doesn't really matter at this point. See right there, I'd fixed the view, changed void to view. So after I import all these references, which I actually have difficulty doing, but actually you just want to import android.view.viewGroup and it should work. I don't know why Eclipse was acting up, but as long as that's imported properly, you should be able to actually go ahead and make this method work. So I'm going to do return this.getItemPosition. So you notice the parameters I pass int position. I just want to return this.getItemPosition. The word this refers to the adapter. So when you're using this inside of that, it's going to be referring to the adapter and not the custom list view. So then I'm going to also this.setAdapter. Now this, in the context of what I'm talking about, actually refers to the custom list view. So this.setAdapter and then the adapter. Notice how the adapter is public. I do want to point that out is because we're actually going to refer to adapter outside of the view. So best to make it public and not private. So I'm going to jump back over to the custom list item view, and I'm actually going to create two text views. You'll see here in a minute. Now what I made the mistake of doing is not actually creating them accessible outside of the constructor. So what I'm going to do is here is go public text view, and title view, and then public text view, subtitle view. And go ahead and import those references if I can. There we go. And in this constructor, that is where I'm going to be doing all the instantiation. But I'm going to actually quickly define a linear layout and text layout. This layout will actually contain both the title view and the text view. And I'm going to go ahead and instantiate them now. So title view equals new text view, and then I'm going to pass the context. Same with the subtitle view. There we go. Also going to go ahead and do the linear layout as well. So text layout equals new linear layout, and pass the context as well. Now here what I like to do is I like to make sure that those, I make sure I line up a lot of things because it makes code organization a lot better and the readability much better. So notice here I say public custom list item view, and I do set title. I make one of the methods passable as a string title, and you notice how I return this, and I'm not making it a void method, but instead returning the object itself. You'll see later why that's really important, that you basically make all of its methods pass itself or return itself. So in the set title, I'm going to do this dot set or this dot title view dot set text to the title, and same with the subtitle, except I'm changing the subtitle. Now here I do actually create a method called compose, which basically you should call after setting all the titles and subtitles, because what this is going to do is actually make sure that the layouts contain all the text views. This is necessary because you want to inflate all the layouts after you've defined them and after you've set their content. And it's important to know that when you're doing this programmatically, that you compose all the layouts after you fill them, because if you don't fill them, then what the layouts will do is they won't function properly, or the padding won't be right, because any guesswork that is made before you actually fill them might not show up properly. So basically I add each view to the text layout with the title and the subtitle following, and then notice how I call this .add view text layout. That's adding the text layout to the relative layout. And then here I'm just going to give it some padding. Now these units are in pixels, so again, I'm not worried about scaling right now, but in the future, maybe in a later video, I'll show you guys how to actually pass inches instead of pixels, because on different display or different pixel density displays, you don't want to pass pixels, but instead you want to pass a physical unit such as inches. So back in that set title, I'm going to actually set the title to typeface bold. And it looks like we're all set. Just making sure that each of these methods passes itself and returns itself. So custom list item view, etc., etc. So you notice how the array adapter takes a custom list item view. I'm actually going to start making changes to the main activity. I'm going to comment that out and just indicate that this came from the first tutorial. And we're actually going to create a custom list item view here. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Custom list item view equals new custom list item view, and I'm going to pass this. This refers to the activity right here, and activity extends or implements a context. So remember that all activities are contexts. So you can pass activities as a context. So notice how I set the content view to the view I just created. I'm going to actually add a couple items here. View.adapter.add, and this is where you'd pass your custom list item view. So in this, I can actually, just as in the previous video, how I was talking about how you create an object as you pass an object, within the method. I'm going to show that here. That view.adapter.add new custom list item view, and again, I'm passing the context as this. Here, I'm actually going to show you that why it was important to keep passing the custom list item view or returning it instead of using void methods. That way I can actually chain a bunch of these methods that sculpt the object. I call that sculpting. I'm not sure what other people would call that, maybe chaining, but a new custom list item view custom list item view this, and then I have a bunch of methods after it that say .setTitle, .setSubtitle, and .compose. Notice that each of these methods actually returns itself, so I can continue to go ahead and do that, to continue to sculpt the object. Now here, I'm just actually going to create a loop. It's a simple for loop that creates a whole bunch of these. And notice how I'm just going to do, loop item and then pass I. What this will do is actually just create a number of list items so that I don't have to keep creating them programmatically. So I think we're all set. Just want to make sure that you're calling compose, because that will actually fill the layout. And if you forget compose, which I do later in the video, you'll understand that nothing will show up if you don't call compose. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this for you. I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, just create, have a little VM for you. And select no. And I'm going to go ahead and select Android 2.2, which I had made in the previous video. And it even remembers the location it was in last, so while that's loading, just feel like I have to show you that what I'm doing here again is I'm accessing the adapter, which we made public, and I'm adding an item to it. But the adapter takes list item view. So when you do add the new list item view each time you call that method, you're just effectively adding each item as you're calling it. So it makes it a simple, clean way to add list items. Now right here, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, so I'm just going to run the application again and select the VM, and it should show up. Notice here that there's a little bit of a problem. The list items do not look clean at all. That's because I actually forgot to set the orientation. We can check that out. We'll just go do text layout dot set orientation, and then you want to do linear layout dot and either horizontal or vertical. We want vertical in this case. What that does is set the items to actually appear in a vertical fashion instead of the horizontal, which it currently is in. So go ahead and run that again, and you'll notice that the list items will in fact look a lot better. Here we go. Notice that the items, they look really neat. We set the padding to 20 pixels, but again, in other display densities, 20 pixels will be a lot smaller. Notice how these items don't do anything when you click them. Well, we're actually going to get to that. So what we want to do is actually create a new class. This is going to be a little bit tricky to understand, but I'm going to call that action. And this action is going to actually extend async task. And I'm also going to set the types to all strings. Don't have to worry about that now. Just make sure that each of those 3 types are strings. I'm going to do some code cleanup here. Now right here, we're not actually going to do anything impressive. We're just going to basically create the class to function later in the code. So we wanted to make a public context and name that context. You'll see why later. Then you want a constructor. So public action context. I'm going to do this dot context equals context. So it's setting the object's context to the context you pass. Now right underneath, this might be a little confusing for you, but I'm going to do a public void on start, and then create an empty block, and then public void start. Now this dot on start. So what that's doing is, I have two methods. One I'm going to actually override, and then one I'm just going to call programmatically. Either one's fine, but I recommend doing it this way. So now I'm going to go back into the custom list item view and actually give it a action. So public action. You can name those variables whatever you like, but I just stick to action. And just like before with the set title and set subtitle, do public custom list item view set action. And then as the parameter, I'm going to take an action. Again, excuse those emails that are popping up. Okay. So I just want to make sure that the imports are correct and that you're returning this. Again, with the whole sculpting idea, this dot action equals action, and we should be good to go. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the main after I'm done doing this and showing off the code here. And right underneath the set subtitle, but before compose, I'm going to create a new one of these, set action. And again, just like before, I'm going to create the object as I'm passing it. So new action, and you notice how I also use the keyword this. I'm passing the activity every single time. An activity is a context, so you can pass that. And I'm going to do @override public void onStart. Notice how I created the start and the onStart methods. I do onStart because it reminds me that I'm overriding the onStart event. Okay, so here I'm just going to create a little test. I'm going to actually make a dialog pop up by doing alert dialog.builder. Now I made the mistake here of not giving a variable name, but you'll see here shortly. Equals new alert dialog.builder context. Because right there I've created a public context. I'm actually able to refer to a context within the action. And here you notice that I will have forgotten to create a variable name, so I'll just call that builder. And then below that, we're actually going to do the fun stuff. Builder dot set title, and you can name this whatever you want. This is just going to be the title of the dialog that pops up. You clicked item number 1. I actually do change my mind about that and just do, I get, some kind of title in there. You can put whatever you want. And then set message. So you can set the message to anything you want, but this is going to be specific to the list item number 1. So you clicked item number 1 and then create and show. Again, that whole sculpting technique is used here in the builder. Notice how the builder keeps passing itself after each of these methods. So now I'm going to do the same for the list item 2. I'm going to go ahead and go below the subtitle. I'm just going to set an action here. And I'm going to change each reference to 2. So that way we know that there's a difference between the two. And actually, back in here, you want to do something, because right now the list item does not know what to do when you tap the items. So I'm going to do set on item click listener, and then you want to pass a new on item click listener object, and then open and close brackets, and import that if you need to. That's actually implementing the methods, excuse me. Now here's the little tricky part. Eclipse didn't name those the arguments for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and rename that. I'm going to call that adapter. I'm going to call this view. Now the third parameter is the position. That's the important part. I don't know what the long does over here, so I just call that other. But what we're going to do here is just make sure that we're handling each item properly. So notice how I named that position. That's important. Position is important because that's how we'll determine, what action to run. So we notice we have a public adapter, so we should be able to access that by basically what I'm going to do here is just create a custom list view or custom list item view, excuse me, and then I'm going to create it by getting the position of the adapter. Notice how I say CustomListView.this. If I were just to use the word this, it actually would think I'm referring to the on-item click listener. But CustomListView.this.adapter.getItem at the position will actually give us the list item we're looking for. So right here, I'm just doing some code organization, excuse me. That just helps me read it better. Now I'm just going to actually check if the item's action is not null. So if the item is not null, if the action is not null, we're just going to go item.action.start. Again, notice how the method I'm calling start and not calling onStart. Again, this is just an organization thing. Enhances readability. So, item.action.start. So if it's not null, let's start it. So actually, these should be good to go because we have overridden the onStart method, and then we're calling onStart when we click the item. Let's go ahead and test the Android application. Should be able to see here that if we do tap the first or the second item, a dialog will pop up. Now here I have to figure out that the escape key is the back key. Okay, so when I click item number 1 or 2, the dialogs pop up respectively. Notice how none of these loop items actually have an action associated with it. But the first 2 items, they do have actions set, so it should be good to go. Just having a little bit more fun here testing it out. So what I've decided to do next is actually show you how to manipulate the list within an action. So what I'm going to do here is actually create a reference to the activity itself. I'm going to call it main self. And before I even catch it, so public static main self. That allows me to access the object from anywhere in the code. Self equals this. Because the activity is actually an object and it's not a static method, I'm going to actually set self to this. So that later, anywhere in the code, I can access the activity by doing main.self. Now I'm also going to make the list view public so that I can access that from anywhere in the code as well. It's all about scopes. So then I just go ahead and remove the object type so that way it's referring to, the objects, the activities view. So I'm just going to set the message to add an item to this list, and then set the second items to you cleared the list. So what that'll do is just let me know what's going on. And then here's where the magic happens. Main.self.view.adapter. And then add. And so what I'm going to be doing here is creating a new custom list item view. So when I do press the first list item, I'm actually going to be adding a new list item to the adapter. All right. So what's going on here is I've actually made the mistake of creating the brackets. We don't need the brackets here. So new custom list item view, just like I did before. I'm going to chain these the methods here, set title, and here I'm going to get a little creative and actually add a random number to the title so that we can tell that I'm truly adding new list items each time I click the first list item. So I'm going to do a little bit of math here, just stand by for a little bit. I want a nice even integer, so I'm going to go ahead and make it a random number within 500, 0 to 500. And I'm going to set the subtitle to just something. There we go. Now here I've actually made the mistake of not calling compose. And we'll find out later that this does not work properly because I did not call compose. But anyways, feel free to sit back and relax and watch me fail epically. Here I'm just going to do main.self.view.adapter.clear. So clicking that will actually clear the entire adapter and even remove the buttons themselves, or at least the items that do something. Now I want to excuse that for a second. I did get a little Slack notification. And some more Slack notifications are inbound, just so you know. Okay. So now when we run it, we'll notice that if I click list item number 1, it says I've added an item to the list, but it actually didn't do anything. Notice that the lines, the line size, if you look really closely, actually increased, but I did not actually compose it. And right here, you can completely ignore this because I haven't quite figured out why it didn't add the item. And I thought I had to invalidate the view, but this is actually not the case. Again, previously I actually just forgot to call compose. So you can ignore this. I'm actually going to end up removing this little block of code later because I've realized that I did not call compose. You need to call compose after that. So here again, I'm wasting some time running it without actually realizing what is going on. Just going to go ahead and do that. Wasting time. Okay, notice how I'm still not actually seeing anything, but the little line size is increasing. Notice how every time I click this, the bottom line, that bottom gray line is getting thicker. It's because the layouts aren't inflated. Again, I apologize for those pop-ups there. So I'm going to do .compose. And that's where I figure out that, oh, I had forgot to call the compose. So here I'm going to be giving them a title, add a list item. Pop-ups. Alright, and down here I'm just going to actually make sure that the second item says clear the list because that's what we want it to do. And once it's all said and done, I think we're good to run. Okay, so let's just go ahead and run as an Android application. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and click no and then go ahead and do that. And we'll see here that it actually does work this time. And each time I add an item to the list, this is a new item and then the random number. Again, while this is not completely useful in the real world, this just shows you that you can dynamically add items to the list. Extremely simple. And we'll clear the list here in a bit just to show you that it in fact does clear the list. I find this somewhat self-destructive. Let's just check out some more items before we do that. And it actually clears the list. I notice how I did nothing to actually prevent the first two items from being cleared, but it does work. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something from that. We did quite a bit today, and thank you guys for hanging in there. And again, if you enjoyed this video, please rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll wait you for the next video. I'm not quite sure what I'll be doing in the next video, but stay tuned. And again, just look forward to that next video. Really appreciate you guys watching this video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.